Jordan Thompson is generally known to be a gentleman. Well, mostly. He's not your typical throw a tantrum drama queen kind of guy, you know, like Nick Kyrgios and company. But recently at the US Open, Jordan came across a different side of himself where he got into an ugly altercation with his opponent. Who did he lash out at and what made the umpire intervene? We'll tell you all about it in today's video. Let's dive in. Starting off with the match that Thompson lost. Mr. Thompson, you're an amazing tennis player and we love your bravado on the court. They're the ingredients that made you a champion, but sometimes your confidence can backfire. And that's what happened to you at the US Open. Now, displaying your intense, passionate side is good, actually a great thing when it comes to sports, but Thompson, we feel, has overdone it. The Australian tennis star towered over his opponent Lorenzo Sonego in his last match. The 28-year-old, enjoying his way through the match, made a stunning comeback to win the 5-set thriller. His thrilling performance earned him a place in the second round at US Open 2022, but unfortunately, Thompson's run was cut short by Colombia's Daniel Elahi Galan on Thursday morning. Jordan was knocked out of the US Open after the embarrassing 5-set loss. Daniel converted 55% of the break points that he won, while Thompson converted 50% of the break points he won. Unfortunately though, it wasn't enough to win that game. After his heartbreaking 5-set loss at the US Open, Jordan is one of the few players who can still lay claim to success in Grand Slam competitions, and even if he didn't win the tournament, there's no doubt that he'll go down as one of the better players in the tournament. Now for the tantrum that should have been thrown. Galan will face either Spain's Alejandro Davidovich Fokina or Hungary's Martin Vuksovic, while Thompson packed his bags to say goodbye to one of the biggest tennis events of the year just 3 rounds later. But he wasn't the one to go down so easily. The Australian may have not fought back hard enough when it came to game time, but he definitely pulled a classic Thompson out of frustration to let Galan know he wasn't so easy. The incident took place early in the 4th set, just when things weren't going too well for the Australian. He approached Galan at the net when he was about to serve, and it quickly turned ugly. The two got into a heated exchange that descended into an altercation, and trust us, you guys, if the umpire hadn't been there, it appears that this could have been pretty much turned into a physical one. You'd think it was just probably a one-off thing and he wouldn't get back at it after the umpire intervened. Think again. They were at it yet again. If a match doesn't offer enough action, then the players involved should decide to go the MMA way, right? That's what Thompson did in the US Open, not to mention he was irked by a rather stupid reason. According to the 3-time doubles champion of the Australian Open, Todd Woodbridge, Jordan didn't like Galan's prolonged delays between serves. His slow serving, which might have been deliberate or just something he usually does, annoyed Thompson so much that he repeatedly asked him to serve quicker, which then resulted in their on-court confrontation. Todd claimed that there was, quote, a little bit of aggro and a little bit of tension between the boys. Quote, I think it has to do with how long Galan is taking. We're not sure if he's gently irked by his opponent being slow, which, by the way, is a normal thing to do as many players take their time, or just frustrated about the match slowly slipping out of their hands. Whatever it was, the temper tantrum was definitely super fun to watch, but we're not sure if it was needed. But then, this is Thompson we're talking about. This is his modus operandi. What's more, he's been there, done that. It's his thing. And no, we're not painting aggression as the bad guy here. In fact, on a tennis court, aggression is acceptable and the right amount of emotions can even help you win. But Thompson is a bit extra in this regard and needs to be reminded that this isn't a Roman Coliseum, it's a tennis court. In the 3rd set of Jordan's match against 2008 Australian Open finalist Joe Wilfried Tsonga earlier this year, the 28-year-old displayed some unusual behavior. After a point, he thought it was perfectly okay to take the ball and slam it into the air, forcing a ball girl nearby to jump away in shock. Why did he need to do this despite being on stronger footing? This was just one of his entitled tantrums or attention gimmicks? No one knows. Thompson actually won this match, but it raised some serious questions, not just about behavior, but also a common problem among the younger batches of players. Moving on to debunking the myth. It's popularly said that tennis is a gentleman's game. Players are expected to conduct themselves with a certain air of grace while the game is in progress. They're allowed occasional outbursts, but those two are super graceful. We mean no tantrums, no ugly confrontations, bordering on a physical fight, and definitely no cussing around the kids. It requires effort, concentration, and skill to excel. Athletes who win championships are typically those who find a way to do all three. But turns out that's not really the case anymore. Tennis may be a gentleman's game, but unfortunately, not all gentlemen gentleman can take the sport and its traditions and rules seriously. Nick Kyrgios throwing his racket at a ball boy after his defeat by Rafael Nadal was not a gentleman would do. Not to mention the excessive whining and complaining he's accustomed to in the games. And then, Brooksby flinging his racket to the ground to scare off a ball boy and not even apologizing for it wasn't very graceful either. Oh, and in case you thought this was bad, things have gotten much uglier. Such as the 24-year-old German Zverev cursing at the umpire, he also went on to slam his chair with his racket at the end of the match. And we're sure if the umpire was anywhere around him, he'd pretty much get into a physical altercation too. What's more is that women aren't very far behind either. The world number 63, Irina Camelia Begu, lost her composure during her match against the 30th seed Ekaterina Alexandrova in the second round. She didn't scare off a ball boy or girl, she decided to scare off a little spectator in the crowd when her racket bounced up into the spectators. And how can we forget the real OG Serena and her embarrassing temper tantrums? Or when Karolina Pliskova decided not to shake hands with the umpire after a controversial loss? They haven't been very graceful in loss either, which brings us to one legit question. What's happening to tennis? Honestly, we don't know, nor do the veteran tennis legends or journalists who have been a part of the sport for decades. According to Christopher Clary, tennis journalist for the New York Times, the more you ignore it or slap yourself in the wrist, the worse it'll get. Another tennis journalist, Ben Rothenberg, also showed serious concern about the situation, asking, "What's happening with this sport?" on his blog. There's no single answer to that. It's true that any sport is basically a pressure cooker, and tennis isn't very different either. And when you're surrounded by spectators of all kinds playing in diverse situations against opponents looking to get under your skin, things can quickly take a turn for the worse. But are mid-match altercations and tantrums over something as trivial as slowly serving really necessary? We'd say a firm no. Let's have a look at some other related news now. First up, Rafael Nadal reaches the fourth round at US Open. Rafael Nadal has beaten Richard Gasquet to advance to the US Open fourth round, continuing his quest for a third Grand Slam victory in 2022. Four-time New York champion defeated the Frenchman in his 18th match. Earlier this year, the 36-year-old won the Australian and French Opens before suffering an injury that forced him to withdraw before his Wimbledon semi-final. Now, for a spot in the quarterfinals, he must beat the American Frances Tiafoe. Next up, French tennis players accuse coach of assault. Fiona Ferro, a French professional tennis player, has accused her former coach of rape and sexual assault. The French Tennis Federation said in a statement on Saturday that it is standing by Ferro in its proceedings she has initiated against her former coach, Pierre Boutier. The federation continued by saying that it was, quote, looking to file a civil lawsuit in this case. Ferro said she had confidence in the justice system of her country and refrained from commenting more on the accusations. Finally, a Ukrainian tennis player refuses to shake hands with a Belarusian opponent. After their US Open match on Thursday, Marta Kostyuk refused to shake hands with her Belarusian rival Victoria Azarenka. Apparently, before their second round match, Kostyuk texted Azarenka to let her know she planned to forgo the customary post-match handshake due to Belarus's involvement in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Instead, the pair chose to tap rackets at the net. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Thompson's confrontation was justified? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.